Hey, this is Manny Navarro, Miami Hurricanes beat writer for The Athletic and co-host of the FrontPage305 podcast. If you're wondering how I produce these podcasts, it's actually very easy. I recommend Anchor. It's a free program you can download to your phone or use online. The web address is anchor.fm. At Anchor, there are tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor then does all the work. It will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, Breaker, and many more. You can actually make some money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Anchor will help link you to advertisers. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So do the easy thing. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Welcome to Miami.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are here this evening to introduce you to our competitors on ¿Qué pasa? 305. Manny Bichuleta Navarro, Andre Fernandez, Walter Villa.
Welcome back to the Front Page 305 podcast. I'm Manny Navarro of The Athletic, joined again by two of my favorite sports writers in the entire world and two of my favorite people in the entire world, Andre Fernandez, Walter Villa. This is episode 4. Is that right, guys?
Episode 4. We got the sequel out of the way, then we became a trilogy. We survived the ratings on that one.
Yep.
Now we're a series. We've got 4.
And it's our last show Before we hit Sirius Radio.
Before we get serious, right? I mean, we're gonna be serious, get serious, and then we're gonna be on Sirius, starting
Us serious? When?
on the Slam Radio Network, on Sirius XM Radio. This seems like the perfect time to remind people that on Twitter they can follow us and get all of our info at Que Pasa 305. I explained on the last show that Front Page 305 was unavailable on Twitter, and we really wanted to call ourselves Front Page 305 because it feels like, you know, we're former journalists. We were on the front page a whole lot. It's kind of a clear way to send a message. But at the same time, we want to be fun and hip and Latino, which is what all three of us are. We all come from Cuban immigrants, and we want to be Que Pasa 305 on Twitter so that people can, whenever they have a question or they want to participate in the show, they can send us questions that way. They can also participate by sending us questions at Anchor FM. That's where we are based out of in terms of leaving messages for us. You can do that there as well. So that's the guidelines. Guys, let's get into the show. Let's start talking about what's been going on in the world and what's been happening with us. First off, Walter, you know, you wrote the show as usual this week. You're a great writer, always have the great ideas. So I'm going to go right into your questions here. Obviously, we've got sports coming back here. The NBA is going to start soon. The Major League Baseball season, we're a little bit more than 10 days away from. The Marlins are going to be going up to Atlanta, I think, on the 22nd to play the first of 2 games of an exhibition. Then the Heat are going to be scrimmaging against the Kings, and we've got MLS tonight as we record this on Tuesday at around 2:30 p.m. in the afternoon. The MLS Inter Miami is going to be playing their second game tonight, but we're still living in this world of COVID and having the highest numbers in the world right now here in Florida, and it's a scary thing, and we don't know if there's going to be a college football season. That's kind of up in the air right now. So we've got all those sort of storylines as the backdrop, but what sport, what storyline, an athlete are we most interested in seeing here, Walter, when this thing finally gets going?
Well, for me, I like the way the NHL did it. I'm probably certainly a bigger hockey fan than you are, Navarro, and pretty close with Andre. I know he likes the sport as well, but I like the way the NHL went straight to the playoffs. To me, that's intriguing to get right to it. And yeah, so I'm curious to see how that goes. The Florida Panthers, right away they have to play the Islanders, and who knows, maybe they could make a run.
I'm going to go the NBA route. I mean, I've been talking a little bit about the Heat, but not as much in recent episodes. But this week I kind of do. I'm curious to see. I agree with you. I kind of like the straight to playoff format. I kind of wish the NBA had done that instead of inviting, even if it meant inviting the extra teams, but put it into that playoff format instead of having 8 extra games. especially because right now you're seeing a lot of these athletes too, that they're either testing positive or there's the guys that are opting out. You're seeing it a lot more in baseball right now. Guys are opting out, and even today there was a story about some umpires that don't want to do any kind of umpiring this season because they're concerned for themselves and their families. And the fewer games, maybe the better. But going back to what I want to see, the Heat, I want to see if no one's really saying this Heat team is really a contender. And we've talked a little bit about, do they have enough this season to even make a run? I think in this quick format of coming back after all this time, I'm curious to see if the Heat really can, get that quote unquote Heat culture together like they tend to do, and tend to train fast and get back into playing shape. And there's a lot of young players that haven't really had prominent roles in the postseason, like a Tyler Hero, like Bam Adebayo. I want to see what the next evolution in their games take off in the playoffs, and see, what's the core of this team, what it can be going forward.
By the way, Navarro, if I may, just one quick interruption. We're talking about COVID. I'm gonna be an advocate for the NHL once again. Very few, maybe one or two, have begged out. And hockey players they are known as being the toughest guys in the major team sports. I mean, guys playing with broken arms and broken legs. So it's not surprising to me that these guys are not begging out.
Losing teeth.
Yeah. Teeth are optional.
Yep.
Hey, I agree with you guys. I think, obviously because it's the playoffs and they're going to get right into it, the NHL and NBA are number one and number two in terms of what you want to see happen. It's going to be an interesting season for both of those teams. I mean, the Panthers, they always seem to underachieve, and now they finally make it to the playoffs, right? I mean, it's kind of an easy way to get into the playoffs. Have a pandemic and you finally give your fans reasons to care.
You get pushed in as one of the extra 8. That doesn't hurt.
Right. And then the Heat, for various reasons, especially the fact that they're really the best team in town every year now. I mean, it's kind of been the consistent thing, to see Bam Adebayo get into the playoffs, see what he does, see, if this Jimmy Butler thing is really worthwhile, what Pat Riley's going to do in the offseason. That's always intriguing. For me, I'm going to go with baseball because the 60-game sprint is probably the most unique thing we're ever going to see in that sport. We've never had baseball do something like this, and I'm curious to see not just from a Marlins perspective, because obviously we care about our home teams here, but I'm curious to see if there's a surprise team that comes out and wins the World Series this year, that just gets hot, that comes out of nowhere. That's not the Dodgers, that's not the Yankees, that's not the high payroll team. They're just a solid team that comes through and wins the championship. It'd be great to see something like that happen. And then I'm curious to see what baseball does, because I think baseball's got a huge problem. Again, I still think the sport is popular among Latinos and when it comes to the World Baseball Classic and so forth. But I think Major League Baseball has really, really started to just fall off the radar. All we ever talk about anymore is the NFL and fantasy football and the NBA and free agency. And, we love the hockey playoffs, and we love, obviously, our college football debates of who's number one. But baseball is by far the worst marketed sport among them all. You don't know any of the players. You don't know, other than Aaron Judge and the guys who hit the long home runs. I just think baseball has really become a useless pastime.
And they had the most labor strife too. That's a problem as well.
Right. And I think they really turned a lot of people off here with the fighting over money, when the reality is all of those guys make a crap load of money. A good majority of them do. They have guaranteed contracts. It's not like, some other sports where, like football, for instance, where, basically the players only get to keep their bonus money. I just think, from my perspective, like, baseball's got a lot of work to do to impress the fans, and this is almost like a perfect opportunity, because now every team involved, every city involved is going to feel like, hey, I've really got a shot. And I'm wondering if this format, this 60-game format, in the end is going to be what the sport should go to, where maybe they do 2 60-game seasons in a year versus having a 162-game marathon. And I know there's the purists out there, Walter and Dre, and I want to get your thoughts on this, but I just think baseball's lost so much popularity. There's fewer and fewer kids playing it. I think they got to do something like this every year now. to really generate the interest and get people to give a damn. What are your thoughts on that?
I think 60 is too short, though, because by the time you need more of a sample size. But you're right, the 162 is a pretty long marathon. And I think that's part of why you see, I mean, the Marlins are an extreme example in not getting attendance. But I think for any team, it's hard to ask fans to go out there 81 times a year for a lot of different reasons and continue to go out there. And I think that's the thing also with just drawing viewers. And the point you made before, I think some of the biggest superstars, you have to market them a little better too. I mean, I don't know if it's a matter of maybe just how the NBA does a great job on social media and gets these guys more visible, but get the Mike Trouts more visible out there. I mean, that's your best player in the league. Bryce Harper has a personality. We've seen it on the field, the hair, the whole thing, just push that. Yeah. Make that more visible, get these guys even more popularity amongst the fans to get that, to generate that excitement, generate that interest.
But how are we going to do that in terms of the owners need their home dates? They need those 81 home dates and the money that comes in from that to pay these exorbitant salaries. So would you have, Manny, in your idea, would you have an 81 game season and then a World Series and then another 81 game season and another World Series? I mean, how does that, or it just gets a little bit weird.
I just don't think. I think here's the problem. I think what we've reached with baseball, and again, this, it's funny. I didn't even introduce this segment, but I kind of jumped into the second question that you had here, Walter, which was, what would you do to improve any of these sports? So I apologize.
Yeah, let's do it.
But this was my idea, hearing you guys talk about what you're looking forward to, and I just jumped right into the second one because I really do feel like baseball needs a huge facelift. It really does. And I think, they've reached the dangerous point where, you started to see it last year where, these great players were becoming free agents and all of them were expecting to make $300 million contracts. And then what happens when they sign that contract, right? All of those players no longer produce at the level that they used to.
I have a couple of changes for baseball, Manny. You want to hear my changes?
Go ahead. Go for it.
The first one is lower the mound to 0. I don't know if it would be called a mound anymore, but basically that would lower the miles per hour in the fastball, I would think, and give hitters more of a chance. We have too many strikeouts, too many walks, too many home runs, and not enough doubles and triples. So if they lower the mound to almost 0 or something, maybe that would help. I mean, that's not a science. I haven't researched that. What would that do? But it would seem like everybody throws 100 now. Everybody at least throws 95. If you throw 92, you're a wuss. So that's one thing I could think could help the other game. The other thing that I wrote down here and I always liked the idea of is the fans to be closer to the action. I think there should be nets. I've been calling for nets all around the stadium for a long time because you can get hurt. But let's say you have nets all the way down to the lines and bring the fans really close in. Obviously, home plate, you need a little bit of distance, but that could be a little bit, make the game more exciting. But look, in the end, if you don't like baseball, you don't like baseball. These changes won't matter. I still think it's a great game. I don't mind the length of it. It's kind of intrigued with your idea, but those are a couple of things. I think if you have more right now, who wants to watch a game where everything is home runs, strikeouts, and walks? We need more action. So what do you guys think of that mound idea?
Well, the mound idea, I think as long as there's not a concern to injure pitchers' arms, if the adjustment takes a toll for some reason, there was talk about moving the mound back. And I always thought that was a bad idea because you add an extra toll on shoulders, on elbows, on everything. You're going to break guys basically for doing that.
Yeah, and 60 feet 6 inches is kind of magical. I like that staying the same.
And the netting, pretty much now, I think every major league ballpark at this point has extended the nets all the way around. So I think that's already in place. Now, where you and me might disagree on that, I think, is because if you're going to create it into like the arena football style of baseball.
Right. Exactly.
But then again, it comes to the injury factor. We're going to have guys crashing into the net or
the net doesn't hurt.
Well, the net doesn't hurt, but what's at the bottom of it if they trip? And trust me, baseball players can get hurt very easily sometimes.
They're so fragile.
You and I have seen that. Well, all of us have seen that. So, I mean, if that's the part to me that I don't think they'd ever go for putting it that close because I think they're gonna raise all sorts of injury concerns. Is it more exciting? Yeah, you'd love to see somebody go barreling in and do a flip and fall and get tangled into the net and the whole thing.
Net. They have a net. Manny, What do you think of that idea? I like
but how much is the net going to sustain a guy coming full speed and landing into the net? Because you're acting like the net is like this parachute or this trampoline that's just going to like pull him off. those guys weigh something too.
I don't think the game needs to change in regards to how it actually takes place. I don't think lowering the mound is going to make a difference.
No,
I think I think the number one concern right now is injuries and how pitchers can basically blow out their arms. I think the mound helps them. Yes, baseball has become launch angles and how many home runs you can hit, and if not, do you strike out? It's become an ugly game in the sense of it's all or nothing. But I just think from a competitive standpoint, to me, the way you fix baseball is you create more excitement in every single city. And if you're not going to expand the playoffs to include more teams, and I get the 162 games you needed to pay the salary, but I disagree. I think, look, we're about to see an entire baseball season played without fans, right? We're about to see 60 games plus the playoffs without fans, and they're still going to make money. I mean, in the end, TV money. I mean, baseball attendance has been going down and down and down. Yes, all of that money helps. When you get fans in the stands, it helps. But is it really that big of a deal? No, I still think the TV money is where they get the majority of their income. And so to me, put out a better TV product. If you have a more competitive season, more people are tuning in. You don't have the 162 games where now, you're not even paying attention to baseball after opening day, which a lot of people do. They basically, hey, where are the Marlins in the standings? Are they 25 games back or 23 games back? It's like, to me, baseball needs to do something drastic, or I think it's going to die.
But they are considering expanding the playoffs, and there already was talk of adding another team that's going to keep teams more in the mix for longer portions of the season, which I think will generate excitement. You're talking about the Marlins, but again, the Marlins are an extreme example for all the other markets out there that do expect to contend most years, that where the fans do anyway. I think if you have several, let's say you have 7 playoff teams now in each league, it is going to create that. And there are some rules that they already have done to speed up the game that I think have helped out, by putting in pitch clocks, even this universal DH. Like, people are tired of seeing these pitchers wail away and are terrible hitting wise. It's almost an automatic out most of the time. Well, guess what? Now you're going to have the universal DH. Now you're going to have the rule to put a runner at second in the 10th inning, so you don't have these 19-inning marathons that bore you to death. So, I mean, there's little rules that they've already experimented with that they're going to this season that could be good if they carry some of them over.
I like the DH. Navarro, I don't know how much time we have in this segment, but I had some NBA ideas. NBA idea is no free throws in either the first half, other than the active shooting, or maybe even as late as the first 3 quarters. Free throws are the most boring.
Why don't we do this, Walter? Why don't we do this? We need to wrap up this opening segment. I need to tease what else is in the rest of the show. Our second segment today was going to be the great debate. We're going to talk about some of the bigger issues sort of going on today, but we could bring over our NBA discussion and talk about how do you fix basketball, how do you fix the NFL.
I want to fix everything.
Yeah, but one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a poll question on Que Pasa 305, our Twitter account, and I'm going to ask people for their feedback. I'm going to have them vote. Should baseball season be shortened? And if so, which plan do you think would create more excitement for the league and better interest for the league overall? All right, well, I'll put that on Twitter. In the meantime, we're going to have a great debate when we come back. We're going to talk about this Patrick Mahomes $500 million contract. We're going to have another Behind Las Cortinas segment where we talk about breaking our virginity, the first time we did something in sports journalism.
Please explain. Yes, okay, thank you.
Yes, and then later on in the show, we're gonna bring on one of our guests. We've had a ton of interviews here in the past week. We talked to our friend Joseph Goodman, a columnist from AL.com recently, about covering the Miami Heat during the Big Three era, what it's like to cover Tim Tebow when Florida won 2 championships, and then going on and dealing with Nick Saban. So we're gonna play a little bit of our interview with Joseph. I know we've also got an interview with Leonard Hamilton that Walter did. That's a good one. We've talked to some other folks and are planning to talk to more folks. I'm going to try to get some more recruiting on the show because I feel like there's a lot of college football interest now in terms of recruiting. This is the time when a lot of kids come in. So we have a packed show like always. So we're going to get to that right after the break when we come back.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to Raúl's Rant, also known as La Descarga de Raúl, where we cover hot topics, no la tiendecita in the malls, like things that happen in the world, and sometimes we talk about sports. Join me in my rant aquí en la 49. Enjoy.
Welcome back to Front Page 305. We're back for our second segment, The Great Debate, joined once again by Walter Villa, Andre Fernandez, your homeboys. I'm Manny Navarro. When we were last on, we were talking about specifically how to fix sports. I went on a long rant that probably put people to sleep talking about baseball and why I think they need a shorter season. Walt V started to talk about the NBA and the ways that he would fix the NBA season, and then I told him to shut up because we're running out of time. So now we're going to pick up right where Walter was beginning to tell us how he was going to fix the NBA. You're on the clock, Walter. Go.
All right. I was saying, other than the fouls in the act of shooting, cut out free throws for a majority of the game.
Shaq would love that. He might make a comeback. Go ahead.
I mean, sometimes when I watch games on TV, I fast forward through the free throw. Okay, he made one of two. I mean, unless it's the very end, and that's why I say maybe you just leave it for the last quarter, speed the game up, and what really and the end of games also bothers me in the NBA. I would say one timeout per team last 2 minutes takes forever. Too many free throws.
This isn't coming from a guy who's on deadline, right? And just trying to make deadline.
Deadlines for newspapers. I mean, you don't have any deadline at The Athletic.
Well, here's an
I was just wondering if you were coming from a deadline perspective.
Here's an interesting thing that Walter will like. In the G League, they were actually doing something like this, that during the game, not at the very end of the game, but during the game, they would shoot one free throw, and it was the equivalent of 2 points if you made it, in order to speed the game up. Yeah. Interesting
concept. I still rather do without the free throws. Navarro, what are your thoughts on that? Do you like that or no?
Well, here's what I would do. This is, again, under 2 minutes, right? It was what we care about is once the game starts to slow down because they're fouling on purpose.
Well, I would say for first 3 quarters, I don't want to see free throws unless it's active shooting. Take the ball out and let's play ball.
Well, what do you think? What do you think about the one less free throw though? Like you still have the same concept, but you make one shot.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting.
What I was going to do is raise the ante. What I was going to say, and again, these are shots in the act of shooting, not just fouls because you're defending and somebody trips and falls over somebody else. I would say this is, once you're in the penalty, I think one thing they could do is up the ante. In other words, once you get to the 8th foul, the 9th foul, the 10th foul, instead of shooting free throws, everybody's a 3-point shooter in the league. Why not let them shoot a 3? Or a half-court shot that maybe is worth 10 points.
An uncontested 3.
I want to stay make this fun.
No, but a half-court shot now is like one of those MTV leagues. That's ridiculous now.
Where do you want that 3? At the top of the key? Do you want it from the
wherever is shooter's choice? Shooter's choice.
Now you have turned this into, let me use Spanglish here, relajo.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, we are a relajo. That's why
you turned it into NBA. You turned it into modern NBA Jam now. Right, like the video game.
And Manny, I think you like this idea for the WNBA, although this might be controversial. And I covered girls basketball for ESPN, a little plug there, and I like women's basketball. And we're gonna have a real live pro women's basketball player on here soon, and I can ask her, but. My thought is lower the rim to 9 feet so these women and these girls can dunk and like really dunk, not just barely dunk. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm all for that. I think the one thing with women they wanted to have the same sort of court dimensions and everything else. But you're right. I think if you're going to get more people to tune in, lowering the rim would be a great way to go because I'm sure a lot of them can dunk easily on a 9-foot rim. With the athleticism that they've got. So it'd be a lot of fun. By the way, I got an email over the break while you guys were kind of messing around, and we were all kind of messing around here. And apparently they're going to do a battle of the sexes on July 28th, 5-on-5 men versus women all-star game. This is all part of this new little invitational Hall of Famer Cynthia Cooper. She's going to coach the Lady Hoopers, and then Mike Bibby is going to coach the men. But you're going to have some men versus women playing a basketball. And I like that. I think it's going to be kind of fun. It's all part of that new 5-on-5 basketball league, or that 3-on-3 rather.
So is it retired players that'll be involved, or what are we talking about?
Yeah, retired players. I think they should get regular WNBA players and have them play the retired players, kind of like the Billie Jean King deal from back in the day. That'd be a lot of fun. And have them play on a 9-foot rim. Let's see the women, how they do.
I like that you didn't know Lou Alcindor, but you do know Billie Jean King. That's pretty good. So
hey, listen, it's
He's a Tony
convenience
for
for
it.
me. It's whatever's easy. That's what I know, Walter. That's the kind of journalist I am. Look, we want to get into some of our other debates, and one of them here that I want to definitely get into was this Patrick Mahomes contract. He just signed a $500 million deal, and I'm going to read this from a story. Let me do what Walter doesn't do. I'm going to tell you where the story comes from. Greg Rosenthal, this is NFL.com, I guess, about the contract. He signed a 10-year contract extension through the 2031 season. Patrick Mahomes, Andre's favorite quarterback because he has him in fantasy football. Yep. $503 million over 10 years, a rolling guarantee structure. He'll be fully guaranteed $63 million at the signing, and then have 103.5 guaranteed by March of next year, 141.4 guaranteed by March of 2022. So right now, if you average it out, he is going to be making $39.5 million over the next 22 years. Previously, Russell Wilson had the highest average salary of $35 million. Boys, are we getting to a ridiculous point with contracts, or is this all overblown and people, hey, the NFL contracts aren't guaranteed anyway? What's the big deal?
I mean, it shocked me the staggering amount. I mean, it's like a baseball deal in football, and you look at how much it passed, the Mike Trout deal, which was 426.5 as I'm looking here, which was also a 12-year deal. I mean, it just surprises me the timing of it because of the fact that right now, the way leagues are a little bit, strapped for cash, they're going to not have as much revenue resources if we're not, if we don't have fans in the stands and that sort of thing right now. And if you look at the Chiefs, the Chiefs themselves, I mean, again, today they put out another contract for a defensive tackle, Chris Jones, to an $85 million extension, I think $60 million of which is in guaranteed money. So, I mean, it's a little surprising that they're taking that sort of a risk, I guess, right now. Is Mahomes obviously worth it? To me, he's a generational quarterback. Like we've talked about it plenty, that I think he's going to be is already the best quarterback in the league and is going to continue to be for years to come. But I mean, to put that kind of money out there right now, it's pretty staggering. And I think it could end up being a big risk for Kansas City. And now, do other teams start to follow suit?
Manny, I think if Tua is as good in the NFL as he was in college, Stephen Ross just should make him the co-owner of the team. And solve it that way. But I have long advocated that another one of my, I think way too much about sports, I think is what we're finding out. But I've always thought that they should have everybody on a one-year contract. Basically, nobody ever complains in tennis about what players make because everything they make, they earn. It's based on their winnings, auto racing, golf, those types of sports. When you get into long-term contracts, there's a real danger for the team that this player is not performing up to that deal or is injured. We've seen those contracts many times. But to me, if every player after their 4-year contract, rookie contract is up, every player is on 1-year salary, and you have a salary cap, and then you have all these signings. That to me, that would make more sense. But what you're going to have right now is it's going to be like a little bit like the economy, no middle class. In other words, you have to have the quarterback and you have to pay the quarterback, but there's going to be very little left for anybody else. So it's going to have the quarterback way up here making whatever, $60 million a year, I guess is going to be the standard now. And then almost a majority of the team making the minimum, which is still more than I make, but it's going to be a huge disparity, $60 million contracts and $1 million contracts and hardly anything in between. And what kind of animosity is that going to be amongst players when you just have the one guy that's the king, maybe one? I don't even see how you can pay two guys huge money like that going forward.
Maybe not an absurd deal, but how do you build long term a team, a sustainable winner if you're only on 1-year deals on the majority of the time? How do you keep guys consistently?
No, it would be a free for all. Imagine the excitement every year, Andre. In the off season, you have all. That's what keeps like the NBA has all those signings in July. You'd have that all these players signing, other than the guys on the rookie contracts. And then whoever wants to play wherever, so somebody would sign the guy for big money. Another team would try to build with a lot of guys making medium money. I think it would be really interesting for the fans because, at least for me, what I've always loved are the signings, the draft, the transactions, the change of personnel, and you'd have everybody being a free agent. I think it would be exciting.
Well, I don't like the 12-year absurd long deal, but I'm just saying, like, I think fans also like to know, hey, my team's going to be good for a while. And I think at least if you have those medium in between range possibilities of contracts, and then it's just, that's up to your team. That's up to your ownership group, your management to piece those, fit those pieces together.
But I think fans want to win. And a lot of times, and certainly a lot of my teams, where they're stuck with bad long-term contracts and there's no way they can ever it's basically hopeless. This year, every team, depending on how good an offseason they have, would have a chance. I think it would be more equitable. You're only getting paid for what you actually are worth that year, not what you were worth 5 years ago.
Well, I think if maybe you put a cap on how many years you can guarantee money, that might be able to fix things a little bit. Maybe you just make it no more than 4 years. You gotta the longest contract you can sign is for 4 years instead of these ridiculous 12-year deals that most of the time don't ever end up reaching fruition. Because the one thing about the NFL, the only thing guaranteed is a signing bonus, right? Teams can figure out a way to play with the salary cap, release guys. I was talking to Kenny Phillips last night, the great safety out of Miami, Carroll City, who played in the NFL for I think 6 or 7 years, but really he had 4 healthy years in New York. Then, tore his patella tendon, tried to come back the following year with the Eagles, couldn't stay healthy there, couldn't get on the field there. Then 2 years later, he signs with the Saints, and he's starting the whole way through, preseason and everything else. And then right before he's going to get his money guaranteed, they release him, and they bring him back 2 days later so that they can avoid guaranteeing his contract and pay him at a lower rate, basically week to week. So these NFL teams, man, they're going to do whatever it takes to screw. That's why they have capologists, right? I mean, that's what they do. They manipulate the system. I just think, this Patrick Mahomes contract, while it makes headlines because you threw $500 million out there, it's not guaranteed. And the moment Patrick Mahomes has a serious injury on the field, none of that money is guaranteed. So I don't know. I just think we all sit here and we get all gassed up over these kind of issues. And I think it's just, to me personally, I think it's kind of stupid sports talk, because all of these contracts, as far as the NFL is concerned, they're non-guaranteed. And, the only money that is guaranteed is a signing bonus. And to your point, Walter, I think if they only limited up to 4 years, okay, you get that initial contract when you're a rookie. And then after that, you can't sign for anything longer than 4 years or 3 years, whatever rule you're going to make. Then you don't put a team in a bad position in other sports like the NBA and baseball, where there are guaranteed contracts, so that the team has to continue to suffer. There's certainly a lot of ways that they can fix sports. But to me, football is just one of those that when I look at the money, I just kind of roll my eyes, because I know most of it is BS.
Well, Navarro, I know you're a big shot at the Athletic, and you told me that Roger Goodell listens to this podcast. So maybe,
Yes,
isn't that what you told me, that Goodell listens to this? No,
he does. He's we exchange text messages. Roger is a big fan of yours personally. He loves the fact that you call him Ron Flores. That's what he calls him, coach of the Dolphins. So.
And you said that we were getting all gassed up. I think that's a personal problem that you were discussing right there.
It might have been lunch. Yes, you're accurate about that. All right, so I think that's going to wrap up the great debate segment. I think we're going to have our buddy Raul from Hialeah check in here on the next segment. We're also going to share a little bit of an interview with you that Walter did here recently, as well as our talk with Joe Goodman. We're going to small little snippets. We're not going to give you the whole thing. You want the whole thing, you just follow us at FrontPage305. Go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. We're all over the place. We're available, and pretty soon we're going to be on Sirius XM Radio, because we're cool like that. We're just
right.
We'll
even go to your house and talk to you.
That just most people haven't even listened to the first album yet, but we are rock stars.
Give them your ominous Anchor promo.
I can give
voice.
you the deep listen to Anchor FM, because Walter and Andre are big fans of when I talk ominously, especially Andre. He loves making fun of me when I talk like this about Anchor.
Listen,
the James Earl Jones voice.
Listen to Anchor as if your life depended on it. Because it might.
So we're going to wrap up the segment. When we come back, we're going to talk about losing our virginity and Behind Las Cortinas.
Welcome to this week's Raul's Rants. This week I would like to discuss two men that I admire very much. They have bad weekends, but I admire them very much still. That's Will Smith and Jorge Masvidal. One of these guys suffered a great disappointment due to a sweaty man pounding a body into the mat repeatedly. And the other one was Jorge Masvidal. Apparently, Jada Pinkett wanted to star in her own version of Independence Day.
Only this time, instead of fighting an alien, the only monstrigo she was fighting was located in August Alsina's pants. Apparently, August Alsina Lara Jada, during this time period, they had this affair. I bet Will Smith wishes he had a real neuralizer from Men in Blacks to be able to erase the memory of what happened between August Alsina and Jada. If he doesn't have one, he's more than welcome to come to my house and we can get litty. We can have 3 or 4 bottles of Havana Club rum. And by the time he leaves here, he won't remember his own name, his birthday. He won't know what's going on when he leaves here. He may even think Wisin Yandel as his own when he leaves. August Alsina bringing this up after 4 years, bringing up this whole relationship, I think is kind of strange. It's almost like he wants to start in his own movie called The Legend of How I Bagged Her Pants. During this time that Will Smith was enduring this affair, I imagine he was starring in his own version of Hancock. Pobrecito, he was very lonely during this time. Poor Will Smith now, que le pegaron tantos tarros, he's not going to have any opportunities in Hollywood unless he plans on starring in the new Deer Hunter movie or starring as Bambi's dad from all the tarros they have put on his head. Well, anyway, let's move forward with Jorge Masvidal. Jorgito took the fight with only 6 days to prepare. He went out there, he lost 25 pounds in 6 days, some sort of Cuban sorcery. I have no idea how he did that. I can't even lose 25 pounds in 6 years, let alone 6 days. I don't know how he lost all those masitas, croquetas, tres leches, papas rellenas, batidos de trigo. The only way I could lose even 5 pounds in 6 days would be if I drank nothing but coladas with no sugar in them. By the time I got to the ring though, I would need a little diaper because I would be squirting out like Old Faithful, which ironically was supposed to be Jada Pinkett Smith's UFC name, but apparently we can't do that anymore. Anyway, Jorgito still represented the 305 well, like a true champion, like a true Miami. He fought hard, and like a true Miami, he took on a job he was wholly unprepared for, wholly not prepared to take it on. But he rode it out to the end until it went poorly, collected his paycheck, and went straight to Flanagan's, like we do in Miami. But that's okay. Next time, Jorgito will train the way he needs to train, get ready the way he needs to get ready, have a steady diet of guarapo, and he'll be back on top, just like August Alsina was on top of Jada. Okay, everybody, have a great weekend, have a great week. Stay safe, take care, and I will talk to you next week.
Welcome back to the Front Page 305 podcast. I'm Manny Navarro, joined as always by the great, very funny Walter Villa and the hilarious Andre C. Fernandez. These guys are stand-up comics on the side. We're lucky enough to just have them here as sports writers as well. And now we're going to talk about losing our virginity in Behind Las Cortinas, a very X-rated segment this week. We're going to talk about the first time that we did something in journalism, not in bed. This is all going to be over the, PG rated. You can have your kids listen to this. This isn't going to, scare anybody. This is us talking about the first times we did things in journalism. And Walter, I'm going to throw you a really soft, slow pitch and tell you, here you go. Tell us about your first time.
Got it. My first time covering the NHL. I had covered many other sports, but hockey down here is a little bit foreign for most South Floridians. So I cover the game there at the BB&T Center. And when the game's over, I took perhaps a little bit too much time to check over my story, making sure I had everything right. So I maybe took about 4 or 5 minutes before I sent it. It's probably being overly cautious. And then when I get to, there's a freight elevator. Manny, have you ever covered a game there?
I have. I basically just followed around George Richards. It's when I think of hockey, I just think
that's the right way to do it.
That's the way to do it. Well, anyway, there's a freight elevator, but by the time I got there, because I took 4 or 5 minutes, it's not that much time, but it was gone. I think there was 2 freight elevators they hold open for the media, I've since found out, and those were gone. So when I'm getting there, time is of the essence, as is said in one of our favorite movies, and I'm waiting for the freight elevator. Finally, when it arrives, it's a huge elevator. It's probably 100 people fit in there, and it's full with all these people selling concessions. They have their empty trays, and all the concession folk is no longer for the media. Right. And so the Panthers had lost the game in overtime. That's another reason why I was a little bit late, because overtime, that's, who scored a goal? Was it Pierre? Who was it Pierre who scored a goal? And so by the time I'm in there, I'm really upset, and I'm talking to myself under my breath, and I'm like, I can't believe this. I can't believe this. And the guy next to me, who's a, I don't know, Coca-Cola salesman or something, he goes, what is it? You can't believe that the Panthers lost? I go, no, not that the Panthers lost, and I'm stuck in here with all these people, and it's stopping on every single floor, and I can't get to the press conference. So by the time I get to the press conference, they lost to the Montreal Canadiens, okay? And so I was going to the visitors' locker room. I needed to get sound from the visitors' locker room. When I got there, the players had already spoken. NHL, I found out, it's not like baseball. They don't mess around. They're talking like a minute after this whole thing has started. And so I missed all the players. So, okay, I still have the coach. The coach is a guy named Alain Vigneault. Navarro, I'm sure you know who he is.
I'm sure he knows how to spell it too.
All the Elaines in hockey. Go ahead.
Right. This guy is a Frenchman, as you have to speak French when you're the coach of the Montreal Canadiens. And so I said, all right, to myself, all right, at least I have the coach. I have some sound. I can fake my way through this as I've done through most of my life. But when he starts talking, he's speaking in French only. And I'm like, oh, my God. I miss the players, and now I have a French-only speaking coach.
Now you know how Steve Wine feels when they start talking in Spanish.
True. So lucky for me, he did later speak in English. I got that sound. And Alain Poupart, and another Alain, who is a great hockey writer.
I know them all the Alains, yes.
Right. He was nice enough to give me the interviews. He sent me the tape of the interviews from the players. So I was able to fake my way through it. And that is the story of my first time covering an NHL game.
All I could think of was Elaine from Seinfeld when Manny said that.
Yeah, but this is Alain, Alain.
Dre, do you want to tell us about how you lost your virginity?
No, but I'd like to tell you the time I first covered the Hurricanes in football.
Go ahead, do that.
Yeah, this is back around 2000, and you know, I mean, young buck, 20-year-old Andre had never really done anything but a high school game. This is my first assignment. My first assignment, I'll spare you the details since it was a GMAC water polo tournament. Nobody wants to hear that.
What are you talking about? Elaine in the NHL wants to hear it. He's very interested in water polo.
No, this is a day back in the Orange Bowl. Rest in peace, the great Orange Bowl. That I can't remember who the Hurricanes were playing, but it was the time where, you know, in 2000, right when, you know, when Butch Davis was there and things were getting back to, you know, greatness just before. That was the year that everybody remembers that they got gypped by the BCS, should have probably played Oklahoma for the title. This is a regular season game. So speaking of that elevator mission, luckily in football, as we know, they do that 7 minutes left in the game. They let you go down to the field. So, and in those days, you get to go down to the field. You're on the field at the freaking Orange Bowl. And I'm thinking, like, this is so cool, the whole thing. But you're trying to keep that professional demeanor, getting ready to go in the locker room, do what you have to do. And once I finally get in there, it's a free-for-all. It's 50 players everywhere. And I'm thinking, oh my God, like, I need to talk to somebody. You know, you try to get over that little bit of, a little nervousness, like how, am I going to go up to somebody and they're going to be, how are they going to be cool about it, that whole thing. All of a sudden, this is the time where I go up and I see Frank Gore. And he had just had one of his great games that season, as a freshman. This might have been 01, not 2000, but he's there and I'm about to take one step toward him. Mind you, I've never talked to him before. And he turns around and yells, "Mr. Fonaboa." If people don't remember, Pedro Fonaboa used to be the high school guy for many years at the Miami Herald. Real funny character. And all of a sudden he goes, "Frankie," that deep, raspy voice, and gives him a hug and the whole thing. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, oh, wow, he's like boys with Frank Gore.
And they shared some silver nitrate, but go ahead.
It's a story for another time. Anyway, but I'm looking at this, and it was a lesson for me as a 20-year-old sports writer. Like, wow, I wonder how, like that, you can get that close with one of these players and have kind of like that rapport and whatnot. And it was because Pedro had covered Frank for years at Coral Gables High. He covered that whole season where Frank tore it up, where it's still all those records are his to this day. He's the Dade County rushing record holder, all of that. And they had built something there. So it was a lesson to me starting out where you can cover, and especially because I became, as we know, you were the high school writer after Pedro, then I took over after you. And you from covering those guys in high school and seeing so many of them over the years, the Teddy Bridgewaters, the Dalvin Cooks, the Duke Johnsons that came later, those guys became my Frank Gores, the ones that I would, interview on a consistent basis, get to know personally, get to know their families. And then once they transitioned and got to the next level, you had that sort of rapport. But back then, I remember that being like a wow moment for me. Like, wow, you can actually be that cool with a guy like that. And then look at Frank Gore now, future Hall of Famer. And still to this day, I bet if Pedro walked up to him one day, he'd probably be like, oh, yeah, Mr. Fonavol, whatever, because that same way it is with us.
And here's the addendum to that story. Who would have ever guessed that Frank Gore's playing career would last longer than Pedro's sports writing career?
Oh,
we have to have Pedro. We have to have Pedro on the show one day. He's a great storyteller, but I don't think he's sports writing anymore. And Frank Gore is still in the NFL, so nobody would have guessed that.
And he's
playing for talk about that. You could do an entire segment on silver nitrate.
Frank Gore still trying to figure out a way to play for every AFC East team possible.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you about any of my first times covering a baseball game or football game or basketball game because I honestly do not remember. I'm like the Wilt Chamberlain of when it comes
in Manny's defense, I had to remember that story because I had a hard time remembering some of my first games.
Are you going to break the format, Navarro?
Well, I'm going to go to the first time I ever covered a major sporting event in a city not known in Miami, where I wasn't the 18th person from the Miami Herald covering something in some peon.
Oh, you mean you weren't doing a sidebar?
Go ahead, Dre.
You weren't doing a sidebar on the hot dog vendors or something?
Right. I wasn't talking to the fans and basically being treated like some unimportant sports writer who's like the 40th guy on the bench. I was actually treated with some respect and was able to cover something prestigious and be the lead guy. And that was when I went to St. Louis to cover the baseball All-Star game in 2009, which was like a dream come true for Maggie. I mean, I know that your wife, I know she's such a huge Cardinals fan. This would have been the dream assignment.
It would have, and it was the time that you let me come by and help you up at Busch Stadium one year.
Yes, I remember that. Yes.
Busch.
So the year is 2009. And I'm in St. Louis. I'm covering my first All-Star game because Clark Spencer's always angry and he never wants to cover the All-Star game. He wants to get away from
All-Star game.
Right. He wants to have fun. And
Wait,
so which you can't blame him. He covers 162 games, right? I mean, the guy needs some time off, so I don't mind doing the All-Star game.
2009 St. Louis. This is not the story where you gave steroids to Mark McGwire, was it? Or is that?
No, he actually gave them to me.
This
you spoiled the ending, Walter.
Sorry.
No, this is before the game. There's, the place is packed. There's security to the gills. And it's because President Obama, is throwing out the ceremonial first pitch.
Oh, wow.
And I just so happened to be, downstairs in the innards of the stadium, walking the hallways. You know how the clubhouses are. You're walking through different hallways. And I just remember really having a terrible need to urinate. I needed to find a bathroom. I couldn't find it anywhere. Every time I tried to go into the bathroom, the Secret Service and somebody else would tell me, I'm sorry, you can't go in there. This is reserved.
The All-Star game is packed enough media-wise as it is. I can imagine with that.
So I'm running around trying to find the bathroom. And as I'm approaching one that I finally think, oh, this is the one. There's no sign on it. There's a door. It shows the men's sign. And as I'm approaching it, all of a sudden these two guys step out and in black suits and say, hey, where are you going? And I said, I'm trying to go to the bathroom. Wait a minute. President Obama comes out, gets on a cart, goes out to the field to throw the first pitch. So I got to the moral of the story is the first time I got to pee in the same toilet that a president got to use before.
You almost interrupted a presidential pee and probably would have been arrested for it.
Right.
Wow.
But that's how close I came to Barack Obama. We nearly shared urinals.
Okay, I think you might have won that segment. That's a good one.
All right, guys.
I think you demolished that segment with that story.
Well, let's move on. When we come back, we're going to play some of these interviews for you. A couple of the clips from our conversation with Joseph Goodman and of course, Florida State basketball coach Leonard Hamilton, who spent many years at Walter. Had an interesting conversation with him about Black Lives Matter. I wanted to play that for you, and I want to get a little bit of our interview with Joseph for you. So we'll do that. We'll come back and we'll wrap up the show.
So we have Coach Leonard Hamilton here with us, and Coach, can you tell me about your days in Miami? What's your fondest memory of your time coaching down here?
Well, I have so many fond memories. a lot of meaningful experiences that over the years. I guess the fondest memory is the fact that we were able to come there when we took this job. They were independent, and the interesting thing is that when I came in for the job interview, Sam Jacobs had a picture of the proposed new arena that he was raising money for. When I left, that picture was still in my office. I was still using it to recruit.
Right. It never quite became a reality while you were there, right?
While I was there, but I thought that the fact that he was such a proponent of wanting basketball to be a major sport at the campus is the most significant fond memory that I have there, because even though we did not enjoy moving into the new arena that they enjoy now, we was part of the planning and part of the movement toward that facility. And I think the fact that they have an on-campus facility now, I think that gives them a chance to compete with anybody in the ACC. And the atmosphere is now what we always had hoped that it would be on campus. And so my fondest memory is just being a part of building something. Even though I've never had an opportunity to play in it, I do take a lot of pride in being a part of that program going from where it was.
Absolutely. Black Lives Matter. We've seen pretty amazing demonstrations on the streets. We've seen a lot more white people involved, and it seemed like it's a really positive thing. What's been your reaction to what's been happening and sort of the positives that have come out of this movement?
Well, I'm concerned. I mean, it's always nice to see the symbolic gestures, the attention that people have brought to the system, and the racism, the disadvantages that people have had to overcome over the years. So that's something that is obvious that we need to work on. But the most important thing is that we've had a lot of symbolic gestures of support, the marching, the Black Lives Matters movement. I'm just hopeful that as a result of the attention that's been drawn and the lives that have been sacrificed, that we find a way, to start coming up with a plan to correct the issues that we're dealing with. This is going on too long. It's so obvious that it's time to make a change. I'm concerned, though, that we still are fighting a system that there are too many people who are saying that they don't even see that there's any issues or any problem. There was systemic racism that exists. Mm-hmm. And I think that those people need to be called out. I like to see a plan. Mm-hmm. And so when you start thinking about it, a lot of it started with our educational system, where people can learn a little bit more. I need to know a little bit more in elementary school about the journey of the Cuban Americans. I need to know a lot more about the journey of the African Americans that came over here in ships and bondage and that were enslaved and their ancestors were beaten and their females were raped and fostered children by the slave owners, and the massacres that went on during that period of time, and then what really behind the scenes happened during the Civil War, and why was that such an important term in our history. Even as an African American, there are things that I'm learning as a result of what has been going on recently that I didn't even know existed back in those days. I didn't know anything about the massacre in Wilmington and the massacre in Orangeburg, the massacre in Black Wall Street in Tulsa.
Right.
And I knew very little about the massacre in Rosewood. I didn't know anything about there was something like I don't know, was it almost over 1,000 straight weeks where we had a hanging where someone was hung.
History. Yeah, history.
So, I want you, there's so much history going on about why we're at this point, and it's been an uphill battle.
Right.
So we started educating people and pointing those things out to people, and just like the journey that the Cuban Americans had to go through,
right,
to be what they are in America. There's very little in the history books about that.
Right.
That's one reason why we don't have the same level of respect for each other
right.
as we should have, because we don't learn, we're not familiar with what we're supposed to be doing. So there's a lot going on. I just hope that we have some definite plans to address it. Right now, I see a lot of symbolic marching and talking and symbols and stuff like that. But I want to see some action.
We didn't ask you about Tua. How could I end the show without asking you about Tua, man? You got it. Dolphins fans are going to be so pissed that I don't ask you about Tua. We got to ask you one question about Tua, man. Like, just give me your best Tua story and why or why not you think he's going to be a star or a bust here in Miami.
He's definitely not going to be a bust. Okay. The kid is such an incredible talent. Getting to know his family, even before he even arrived to Alabama was a lot of fun for me. Great family. The family lives in Alabama, which is in Shelby County. It's like Birmingham is a sprawling place, and it's like 30 or 40 minutes away from downtown. That is like high school football, heaven there, where these guys decide to live, and they're all about ball, man, all about it. I mean, that's all their life is about football. And, Tua is just going to be a rock star down there. He's got a great personality, very laid back. He's got like this, awesome island vibe. I mean, just super chill and an incredible talent. He's going to have to throw the ball away, though. He's going to have to sit down with Marino, and, Marino's going to have to be like, this is how you play in the pros now, okay? You throw the ball away. We're not taking sacks anymore.
Yeah, they got to protect that investment, dude. He's got to definitely do that because, really, I mean, you look at that team right now, it's like, They're starting to turn a corner, I think. I like Brian Flores, although Walter calls him Ron Flores for some reason.
Not going to live this down anytime soon, Walter.
Yeah, I really like Brian Flores as a coach. I like what they're doing with the roster. I just think they're probably 2 years away from being a playoff team. But, right now is, the perfect time for Tua to just spend a year learning, getting, completely healthy, not being out there with a bunch of young offensive linemen just yet so he doesn't get hurt, and then learning how to throw it away. They do that. I really think this drought of the Dre and I have had to endure as Miamians, because Walter's a Jets fan, he doesn't give a damn. But Dre and I are Dolphins fans and grew up Dolphins fans and Dan Marino fans. We have long suffered, dude. I remember the Super Bowl. Do you?
No, we don't know what a Dolphins Super Bowl looks like. That's where we're going.
I do, because I think I was 5 or 6 years old, and I was a huge Marino fan at the time. I remember watching that game and crying the whole time. But I basically
you're
not stopped crying.
Yeah, you're a little older than me. I only remember that game on VHS because I watched it over and over just to show myself what that might actually look like.
All right, so you just heard the interviews with Leonard Hamilton and Joseph Goodman. Walter, before we wrap up the show, I just want to get your thoughts on that Leonard Hamilton interview and really what stuck out in your mind.
Just as you mentioned before, what he said about the Black Lives Matter movement, the fact that basically the protests were all well and good, but he wants there to be a plan of how to move forward. And the second thing, he wants more education. And I liked even that he said that he himself wanted to be more educated, for example, on the plight of the Cuban people who left communist Cuba. So just that thing that he said, there has to be a plan going forward and more education for everybody.
Dre, we got a chance to talk to Joe Goodman. What did you take away from our fun conversation with him a few days ago?
Oh, that was interesting to see his perspective on, just the way things are right now in the sports world, and some interesting stuff too, between, I didn't even know about that baseball team, in Birmingham, the Birmingham Barons, and the history, this being the centennial anniversary of the Negro Leagues right now. And, always Joe with some interesting perspective, and it's always good to reminisce a little bit about, the Big Three era with the Heat, and just a fun time, just a crazy time that it was in Miami sports back then, to, something we may never experience again on that sort of a level, that sort of championship dynasty, and that had such interesting personalities all in one place.
Yeah, two interesting guys. I'm glad we both were able to get them. And if you want to hear the full interview with Joseph Goodman of AL.com, the former Heat beat writer and Gators writer, who now drives Nick Saban insane, and you want to hear Leonard Hamilton, the former Miami Hurricanes basketball coach, Wizards basketball coach, and current FSU basketball coach, be sure to go to our podcast on Apple, Spotify. We've got those as bonus tracks. You can listen to the entire interview there. All right, so that's going to do it for this week's podcast. For Andre Fernandez, Walter Villa, we had a blast, guys. We'll see you next week.
Boom. Boom. Yeah. It was a good show. The Atrás la Cortina was very good as always.
That's a cool story, man. You never told me.
Yeah, I never.